You're good.
This resolution recognizes the work done by all county commissioners across the state of Pennsylvania under the County Commissioners Association, of which we've been very involved in. Each one of these point out an issue that counties are addressing. We're blessed in the fact that one of these, several do not affect us directly. Our children and youth are doing very well, but we do know that we have a workforce crisis here in Butler County. We know that we have a human services workforce crisis probably looming. We're looking at people not going into mental health services because they're spending $30,000 and $40,000 to get a college degree that they make $20,000 and $30,000 a year operating and doing therapy and counseling. So all of these items that were addressed, 911 funding is very near and dear to us. It's impacted us nearly $1 million a year currently that we're not seeing in Butler County. So we're addressing that issue. We want to bring those dollars back in and reformulate. And when you talk formulas across the state, if you have a single pot of money and you reallocate it, you're having winners and losers, or you can ask them for additional funding to go into that pot. And those are the discussions that we have in the legislative body. I think it's important to note that while we have agreed and voted on these at our County Commissioners Association, not all of us agree to all of these items on this list. I just want to clarify each one of those items as, as a full body of voters, and not as just us individually. This is a recognition of what it is.
Anything further? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carries.
Commissioners, approval of budgetary transfers, ratification of personnel transactions, travel requests, requisitions, and check register.
Is there a motion? So moved.
Second.
Anything further? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carries. Okay, any questions from the media?
Just with Act 77, I know up in there right now, does that impact any day-to-day operations at the elections office, especially preparing for the spring primary, whenever that may be?
Aaron may answer that, but I would say right at the moment, no. Because you have to proceed as though, things are going to move forward until you're told otherwise by the state.
Commissioner Rush is correct. The communication that I've received is to, the state level is to proceed as normal until informed otherwise. Simply because, obviously we have no control over any of that, but we need to prepare as we would for any other election until we know definitively one way or another. Otherwise, we could find ourselves woefully unprepared, and that's not what this is to be.
I mean, this is purely speculative on my point, but I mean, is there a possibility that, these mail-in, whenever the ballots are, whenever they may be put together, send out the mail-in ballots, they come back, and Act 77 is ruled unconstitutional. Is there theoretically a possibility where somebody would have voted, sent in the mail-in ballot, it's deemed not usable? You think that timeline would not?
I did hear today, Tyler, that what happened was the ruling came out on Friday from Commonwealth Court, and then that very same morning, the governor appealed it to the Pennsylvania Supreme Court for a stay to keep everything status quo, is what that basically says. And so I heard this morning that the appeal for that ruling will take place between spring of this year and fall.
I think the question though is whether or not the stay, it stays.
Yeah, right.
Because there's also an appeal to the stay.
Right.
Yeah.
The law in Pennsylvania is anytime injunctive relief is issued against a governmental entity, that being the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, by law, there is an automatic stay if an appeal is taken. An appeal has been taken as indicated by the governor's office. As such, by law, a stay is automatically put into place and will remain in place pending the resolution at the next level, that being the Pennsylvania Supreme Court. As I believe your paper has indicated, the paper's indicated there's an appeal to that. It's very unlikely that appeal is successful, but you're allowed to appeal it, and I believe they've indicated they expect to have a decision on the appeal within 2 weeks. But right now, we proceed under the current law and the current status, which is An appeal has been taken, as such, the injunctive relief is stayed, and we proceed under the current guidelines.
And my only other comment on that is that we will be prepared to handle whatever eventuality occurs, and obviously, in consultation with the supervisor of both the Board of Elections and the county commissioners, we'll be ready to handle whatever happens, we'll be ready for properly.
But it does put pressure on you, along with maps and other.
Well, that's
Yeah.
the maps, I mean, obviously, I don't know are you guys privy to any timeline when it comes to congressional maps? Because I know congressional maps are different than state house, state and senate maps in terms of timelines. Do you guys have any indication as to when those will be determined?
So the timeline for the congressional map was on January 24th, last Monday. Commissioner Oshie and myself were part of submitting a proposed citizens voters map. And then that map was to be considered by the Commonwealth Court, Patricia McCullough, the judge. And so she was to make, that map was submitted as one of 14 maps for her to consider, to make a recommendation to the Pennsylvania Supreme Court. And what happened yesterday was the Pennsylvania Supreme Court ruled that she is not to make a recommendation now to them, that they plan to
Take it up on their own.
on their own.
Okay.
So they will make that final decision on the congressional maps.
And were you saying, Kent, or one of you were saying that these maps wouldn't revert, you can't revert back to the prior maps for this election, right? Congressional maps have to change for this primary, so there's a chance the primary date could be delayed if this congressional map is not chosen in a timely manner.
There's two concerns in it. One is shortening the petition signing, or is moving the date. Those are both stressors on the system and definitely stressors on the election system. The congressional map does have to change, but we're losing congressional seats, so there has to be change. The state, the House, and the Senate maps, those should be held over in a different year, should they so choose. We don't know. We still don't know.
Okay.
I'm just smiling, because you
Yeah.
could just throw some, mud at the wall and see what sticks. I don't know. It's a sad state of affairs in my opinion. It is somewhat chaotic.
I don't think I've had anything.
So on a completely different note, where is the county? So I remember, and I don't have to find the exact date with this, but the county was working with a handful of municipalities in southwest here on stormwater management. I haven't heard anything about that in, more than a year, I think, at this point.
Right.
So where are we with that?
So the Lower Cottaquanessett Watershed Group, about 10 municipalities, they have been working pretty diligently at seeing if they can identify an authority to manage stormwater accounts. They're looking at potential implementation of a stormwater fee, and that's why we would have an authority to handle that financial transaction. In addition, they're preparing a grouping of projects. All municipalities receive some ARP funding, and stormwater control would be an acceptable use of those funds. So they're identifying those projects where they think might provide the biggest impact into the region. So that doesn't necessarily suggest that they would do any one project in every municipality of those 10, but they may conclude that they might do 2 projects or 3 projects that are a little more substantial in one particular area that would benefit the watershed region as a whole. The other thing that we have being looked at right now at the county level, and we have reached out for some preliminary estimates on an update of our 167, Act 167 plan. And you'll hear about that in some, future meetings to come.
Do we have a date for the saldo hearing? You might wanna mention that at first.
May 2nd? Or, I'm sorry, March 2nd?
Saldo is
March
March
2nd.
2nd, Wednesday,
March
March
2nd.
2nd, 9 AM in this room.
And can someone, explain what a saldo is? For
It
those
sounds
in the
fancy.
room who don't know what a saldo is,
So if you recall, about a month ago,
just even the words would be good.
the board, approved the motion to publicly advertise the subdivision and land development ordinances. So this covers municipalities that do not have their own individual, subdivision, zoning, land development type ordinances. And, there's 27 of those in the county. They revert to the county's, ordinance. But that includes things like if you are splitting up, a tract of land and you're gonna put a road on it, how many parcels you might be able to have access from a single road. It just really addresses, development issues, both commercial and residential, development in the region.
I'm good.
Okay with that. I just, before you start with the public comment, though, I just need to note that, I have to leave at 11:45. My husband did have surgery on Friday, take him to the doctor, so I don't want you to think that I'm running out the door on you in case we don't get through the whole part of the public comment, that I'm fleeing.
You and Trudeau.
Cause I'd love to, I'm here to hear, what everyone has to say, so.
Morning, ladies and gentlemen. We've reached the point in the meeting where the commissioners have set aside time for the public to comment on items that might come before the board, matters of general concern, official action, or deliberation. Most of you should know by now, the presentations are limited to 3 minutes. I'd ask that you please, when you approach the podium, state your name clearly so we can confirm it in the minutes, and state the municipality in which you reside. As you know, these are to be public comments. It's not back and forth discussion. It's a chance for you to speak and address the board. As such, I ask that you face the board in your during your comments and not turn to the room. Lastly, during public comment session, there'll be no personal attacks on the character or reputation of employees, department heads, or any other county officials, nor are you to make personal or public attacks on those present or those who are not present. With that said, first we have Ms. Timblin.
She says she's not.
Next, I believe Mr. Shear. Yeah.
All right, good morning. Zach Shear, Donald Township. Week after week, we are here speaking at these commissioners' meetings. We are told over and over that you are looking into the results of the 2020 election and are still awaiting information from Aaron Sheets. This to me seems like a distraction. I feel we are being lied to, and you're just jamming up the time we have to do a forensic audit in the county. After speaking to individual countless times who was on the election commission, educating us on recommendations made to the county, we were being left in the dirt. I've not seen one single recommendation integrated into our elections process in this county. This is a disgrace, and you should be ashamed to call yourself Republicans. In an email sent by Leslie Oshie, I am still concerned about the software subtracting votes. It's enough to simply say, let's do an audit. How can you prove these votes were counted for? Because to me, they could have been disappeared from either Trump or Biden's totals. But you still sat there and freely certified our results. Therefore, I would like you guys to take action, or you'll be asked to resign. If you can't work for your constituents, then I'm done paying your wages.
Bernetti.
Clinton Township. Recent right to know requests shed light on significant issues with electronic voting machine scanners. Commissioner Oshie shared her concern via email to Elections Director Aaron Cheesley regarding the machine software subtracting votes, the breakdown of a $100,000 brand new scanner when it worked the day before, and the record of count in the machines as evidence. The main takeaway from this statement is that the voting machine scanners cannot be trusted. Voting machine companies provide little to zero transparency regarding the software/hardware that they are using. The software is off limits to public inspection, can be manipulated with algorithms, accessed by third-party hackers, and ballot images can become corrupted. Aaron Cheesley stated ES&S caused extra work and grief on multiple occasions, and I have a solution that will make elections simple, straightforward, and transparent. The solution is hand-counted paper ballots with paper poll books, not voting machine scanners with electronic poll books that require internet connection. Voting Amish will save hundreds of thousands of dollars for the county. You don't have to worry about software subtracting votes, software updates, purchasing new machines, third-party hackers, or hardware malfunctions. Paper ballots provide physical proof of a voter's intent. It can be safely recounted in case of a contested election. Counting in public provides 100% oversight, transparency, and trust, and it gives the elections back into the hands of the people, not private voting machine companies. The way to implement paper-only voting system is simple. Each ballot has its own unique ID number and is easily traceable. The voter receives the ballot, fills it out, and is handed a receipt upon voting that confirms the ID number on the ballot that was used. The poll worker writes down the ID number in the poll book, and the ballots are counted at the precinct level where the judge of elections, inspectors, and other poll watchers observe the count. This will require more public participation. And a way to get the public more involved is to invest in a marketing campaign to promote judge of elections, inspectors, and poll watchers. The county could even provide compensation as an incentive to get people more involved during election day. Voting by paper with no machines is the only way to restore complete transparency to the election process. I am calling upon the commissioners to implement paper-only voting immediately, to throw out the machines and scrap plans for electronic poll books. The public will step up and take responsibility as we oversee our elections, not voting machine companies. Thank you.
Matt Pearl.
Hi, my name's Matt Crowley from Jefferson Township. I'm just gonna add on what they say. It seems like everybody's kicking the can down the road here. When we kick the can down the road, if you haven't looked at history, every empire, almost every empire has fallen from within because you kick the can down the road. If you haven't noticed either, there's a little fringe minority up in Canada that's kind of sick of the government failing them. We're kind of sick of the government failing us. Our God-given rights are under attack. Our Constitution, the foundation of this country, is under attack. Our children's future is under attack. I can't even look at my 8-year-old with what's happened in this country. Are we better? Have we been better the last 2 years? It's been a disaster. I work in healthcare. It's a disaster with our government, how they failed us. Protocols, just an absolute failing disaster. And when you kick the can down the road, it doesn't solve the problem, it makes it worse. Because communism follows the same formula, and history repeats. Look at the history books. Ronald Reagan said best, freedom is never more than one generation away from extinction. We didn't pass it on to our children in their bloodstream. It must be fought for. It must be protected and handed on for them to do the same. Or one day when we spend our sunset years telling our children and our children's children what it would be like, what the U.S. used to be like when men were free. You got to do something about this. We can't just kick the can down the road. Look at what's been happening. I have been so destroyed, and these Canadian truckers have put a fire in my heart that's been dead for the last 2 years, because I've seen so much destruction. And a lot of it, the majority of it, is government destruction. And they're doing it because it's all about corruption, control, power, and greed at the expense of its people. And it needs to end. Thank you, everybody, and I hope you guys take a stand. We have your back, we the people have your back. Because that fringe minority isn't much of a fringe minority in Canada. It's the majority. Thank you.
Ms. Steele?
Jennifer Steele, Senate Township. I'm just gonna give you guys these if you'd like to report on them. These are the emails that Zach was talking about. We also have it in the Butler Eagle today. We paid for an ad for the emails that Zach was talking about. Really don't have anything planned. I'm just gonna speak from the heart. We started coming here back in August, and I really thought and wanted to, like, especially Leslie and Cam, because I thought Women Republican Day, we're gonna get stuff done. I haven't seen anything being done. It's very disheartening. And then the final straw for me was the emails. I don't know how an election can be certified when knowing that computers were subtracting the votes. And again, they could have been buying votes, crazier things have happened. I am tired of coming here. I am. We actually agree with the Democrats there. But I will say, I think you've raised fires in a lot of us, and I'm a very loud person, sometimes maybe a little obnoxious, and I will not stop. I have 5 children. I will not stop fighting for them. My dad's a Marine, and I will follow in his footsteps as much as I can. We start at the county, we start local, okay? We need to keep our freedoms here, and we need to raise a fire in everybody in this county and in this state and in this country, and we're not gonna stop. We won't stop until our freedoms are upheld and that Constitution is upheld. And as far as the Canadian fringe goes, there is that fringe starting here in the US. So I don't know if anybody's heard, March 4th is the tentative date for the United States truckers to be going to DC. We will probably be getting buses with the Butler PA Patriots. So if anybody wants to, go on our website and keep track of that, Butler Patriots, papatriots.org. So again, thank you, and I really hope, I know there's a statute of limitations of 22 months in order to do a forensic audit. We're coming close to that 22 months end. So if we don't do something now, we're not gonna be able to do something at all, and that scares me. Okay, thank you.
Sean?
Morning, Mike Chop, Center Township. Nothing really prepared. I feel like a broken wheel every couple of weeks up here. But bottom line is, we know you were aware of issues with our election. The results should not have been certified, and now's the time to do the right thing. It's time, well past time. We can do this, we can correct this, and we can start our own movement in the state of Pennsylvania to do the right thing. So please do.
Mr. Carroll?
Brendan Carroll, Butler Township, and like some of my colleagues, I don't have anything prepared either. I figured I'd come in and leave it to the Lord what I speak about, and all glory be to God. I had the good fortune of sitting next to Mr. Aaron Cheesley today, and we were discussing about about the election, of course. That's the elephant in the room, which we spend a lot of time talking about parks and recs and all that, and that's good to know where the money's going. But as everyone else has mentioned, we want to know what's going on with the elections and what we have going forward. Now, it sounds like there's some great things going forward. So in the past, when you voted, at the end of the day, the judge of election was responsible for posting up the tally in that precinct. So I understand there's an act that removed that requirement but didn't prohibit it. So Mr. Cheesley said, hey, we're gonna put that back up so people can independently run around and tally votes. So that helps with stuff like machines subtracting votes and helps prevent future mispractices, if you will. So I think the last 2 meetings I've been to, there's been zero opposition to a recount. There's been people saying, hey, if something's not right, we wanna know it's not right. So I have to agree with the first speaker who got up and said, if you guys aren't gonna do anything, we're gonna have to ask you to resign. I mean, if you're not doing your job, you're not doing your job. This lies on you. It doesn't sound like Mr. Cheesley's a logjam. It sounds like it's something between the board here, is the comment I heard. And I think the best way to settle this all, and Aaron agreed with me, is that we have an open session where we allow questions. I'd like to propose, perhaps insist, that you have a time scheduled by next meeting in the evening where everyone could come. We are getting very proper, I suppose you might say. We know the rules of decorum. We know not to talk and laugh at others. And so this way, there's some folks that don't feel comfortable at my invite to come out to my facility. This is a public facility, it's for public matters. So please, by next meeting, have a date scheduled in the evening we can all attend and have an open session. We could sign in, we could kind of do it like Congress. Every person come up, we are the Congress. We'll question you guys, we'll question Ms. Cheesley. We could have a back and forth question answer session, 3 to 5 minutes. We can limit it to an hour or two, whatever works, and perhaps get some answers and get the ball rolling in the right direction. Thank you.
Ms. Hall.
Good morning, I'm Kimberly Hall, Forward Township. So sometimes to understand, events happening in our present, we need to kind of look back a little bit, just because our memories are short and there are things that happen that we kind of forget about. So over the past several weeks, we have witnessed a situation that continues to evolve regarding November 2020. Those on the other side of this issue contend that we are just a bunch of Trump supporters who are unable to get over the purported results when election integrity is the actual cause that we're passionate about. Before we consider the Commonwealth's court ruling last week, let's remember some of the events after the election. Act 77 was passed when no excuse mail-in voting became part of the election law without any consideration whatsoever for the array of implications and the impact on the election bureaus and counties all over the state. The PA Supreme Court illegally ruled no signature verification and votes could continue to be counted after Election Day. Those votes were ordered to be segregated initially, but were eventually just thrown into the mix. January 6th, the day where the electoral results were to be certified. Let's remember, Senator Corman composed a letter whereby he asked for Kevin McCarthy to send back Pennsylvania's 20 electoral college votes to the state because of the irregularities. So who exactly did those events of January 6th benefit? While Ray Epps stood outside yelling for people to come into the Capitol and police removed the barriers and ushered people inside, our fellow citizens have been held in essentially gulags, violating all of their constitutional rights, not receiving due process, while Ray Epps continues to be free. And we're supposed to believe he was not a federal agent. Any chance to turn it back to the states was derailed. Fast forward to the present, where a 91-page lawsuit in Delaware County has been filed where it was alleged that individuals conspired to destroy and delete election data after incriminating video emerged showing as much. Also now the Commonwealth Court ruling finding Act 77 unconstitutional reverberated through the state, calling into question whether many of those mail-in votes were valid. As expected, of course, as you stated, that decision was appealed. And being that our PA Supreme Court has already violated election law, I'm not hopeful that they will uphold the lower court's ruling and incriminate themselves. But does all of this not call in question the integrity of our election? There is more. In July of 2020, there was a case that went to the Supreme Court, Shelby Advocates for Valid Elections versus the Tennessee Secretary of State. This case argued that the AccuVote TSX systems, produced by Premier Systems, formerly known as Diebold. You see, these election software companies frequently change hands whenever their validity.
Could you submit that? Could you submit your
Yes.
comments so that we can get the rest of them? Thank you.
So I'm done.
Yes, ma'am, sorry.
Kim,
But
I
that's why
wanted
I'm
to yield
asking,
some time.
that's why I'm asking you to submit.
I appreciate your comments.
Kim. Kim.
Johnson.
Giving out handouts, this is a copy of one of the pages that I received from the Butler County Bureau of Elections, where T's were put in my name. There was an investigation done, and the ballot showed there was no T in my last name. So I want to just give you a copy of this, because I know Leslie and others requested copies, and they didn't get copies like this. So, yeah, you've seen them. Anybody want some? Could you guys just pass that around, because my phone's limited? Last primary election, I ran as a write-in for judge of election. And make a long story short, I found out that T's were put in my last name. I investigated it. Well, I was told that I didn't win because there was Charlie Johnston in my township, and there was no Charlie, and there was just a Charlie Johnson. So I investigated it. I got copies. This is a copy of my original copies that I have at home that I got from the printer at the Bureau of Elections downstairs. Someone put T's in my last name. The Butler County Bureau of Elections is internally corrupt. And it needs to be investigated and found out how this happened. They tried to be thrown back on me and said, I'll probably put the T's in my name after it was handed to me, which it was laid out on the counter when they were handed to me, and I was looking at them, and I engaged in conversation about it with Aaron Sheasley and Chantel McCurdy. And I did not have time to put T's in it. And why would I do that? I went down there to find out what happened because I ran for a position. And if there was no T's in my name, then I would have went from there and argued about the fact that there was a mistake. But there's no reason for me to put T's in my last name, and I have no time to do that. And I'll be glad to do a polygraph. I think you should do that. I think you should do an investigation. I think there should be subpoenas. Everybody involved. Everybody I showed these to said, oh my gosh, when they looked at it. Even you guys. But there are a handful of people that did not, and they're all related to the Bureau of Elections. They all looked at it and said, oh, that doesn't look odd. Everybody have a copy? Look at it. They said, no, that doesn't look like anything out of place. And one of them keeps coming up here almost every meeting that we have, arguing the fact that we should not have a full forensic audit. That's all I gotta say.
Brian?
I actually have a beautifully crafted message that times out under 3 minutes, but I think I'll just hold on to it unless you guys insist, but I think I'll just hold it. Thank you.
Commissioners, that's all I have signed up.
I must have signed the wrong paper.
Check the wrong button. How long have you been doing this?
6 months now, I think. Steve Crawford, East Butler Borough. Happy Groundhog Day. I've been down here for 6 months or so trying to push for a full forensic audit. Sometimes it gets frustrating, but I try to do a logic puzzle in my mind and think if the 2020 election was legitimate and we do a full forensic audit, you could make us, me and anybody that thinks like me, look like a fool, and you could blame us for the cost. Then we get over it. Be no downside to that. Or if we do a full forensic audit, we could identify the problems, correct them, the cost would be justified. You'd be a hero in the eyes of people that think like me. And then we could move forward with confidence in the integrity of our elections. So I'm not seeing a downside to doing an audit. Just not seeing it, unless we fear repercussions from the state or the federal government. That's a possibility. They might withhold funds for something. So I understand that there would be a little bit of concern about that. But those are the very people that probably benefited if there was a fraudulent election. So as brave Americans, we should stand up against that. Evil can only prevail if good people do nothing. And this is America, land of the free and home of the brave. Well, we each have to answer that, not with words, with actions. Thank you.
Is there anyone else who intended to speak and didn't check the box? Commissioners, that's the only individual.
You can finish.
Unfortunately, as the county solicitor, my job is to enforce the laws, which sometimes means the rules of decorum. And you'll often hear me tell this board that you make an exception and it's a slippery slope. My recommendation would be nothing against Ms. Hall or anyone else who speaks today. My recommendation would be no, because the problem is if we allow her to go beyond 3, how do we rein in the next person who may want to go beyond 3? And you may not want to hear what that person is saying.
So her comments, you have them all written, and what we usually ask then is that they be submitted and entered as part of the record in the minutes so that we can get copies of those and then everyone else can access.
Which is a good point. Some individuals in this room are aware of that practice. To the extent that you have comments that you believe might exceed 3 minutes, you want to cite cases or this or that, you're always permitted, and I'll provide my address to anyone who doesn't have it, you're always permitted to email me that information, and we do attach it to the minutes and make it part of the minutes. So you can't submit written comments either before, preferably before, or immediately after. If they're not given to us today, they probably don't get into the minutes, but yes, you can supplement your comments either ahead of time or afterwards with written comments, and they will be made part of the official minutes.
Yeah, I was moving on to that, thank you.